Bush went to that mosque, Al Muhajirun Mosque in Virginia, I believe, and he spoke very highly of Allah and Muhammad and Islam. And with this team of Muslim Brotherhood behind him, Nahad Awad was on his right hand, actually, if you see the video. And I said, we have not learned a thing about September 11. And I said, then it will come back again. But next time it will be much bigger, that we will never be able to survive it. We only lost 3,000 in September 11, Brennan. The next one, it will be in the hundreds of thousands. It will be the crushing of America. And I believe it's going to happen because simply we're not learning from yesterday. It's history. If you don't learn what happened yesterday, it will be your tomorrow or your future for sure. And that's the problem we have with Islam and September 11th.
TheStraightWay.org is his website. TheStraightWay.org. Thank you, Usama. And thank you guys for watching and supporting. I'm Brennan House. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan, and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
When you come out and when you leave the room, you'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that, and you'll be reading about that. It just happened moments ago, and our great general, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's been so incredible, including what took place in Iran, knocking out potential nuclear power for a long time to come. I think within a month they would have had it if we didn't do what we did. But he gave us a little bit of a briefing. And you'll see, and there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So we took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over.
Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, the fight for freedom and truth is very difficult these days, my friends. We find ourselves in a constant state of information warfare that makes the truth almost impossible to discern, and that can limit the freedom of you and every other American. But there are a few Americans in this fight who will not let it go. Some of them met with high-level Pentagon officials this morning because they stood their ground for the truth and are insisting on adequate reinstatement for those military members harmed by the unlawful COVID vaccine order, and to hold the commanders who perpetrated it accountable. These Americans are much greater in numbers than the establishment wants you to believe, and they are doing the things daily that matter in this fight. The fight includes eliminating the 100,000 American deaths each year to drugs like fentanyl, destroying the drug cartels that provide them, eliminating human trafficking rings that fund those cartels, and finding and destroying adversaries that have infiltrated our country, and finally, ensuring America has the economic opportunity to give to every one of us so that we can prosper and do things like buy a house. Well, my guest today is one of those Americans standing up for their fellow citizens in this fight. He is Texas gubernatorial candidate, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, and Dr. Pete Chambers. Dr. Chambers is a decorated Army veteran whose remarkable 39-year military career includes service in the active duty reserves and the National Guard. Not many people have done that. He started his service as an enlisted infantryman and became a senior Green Beret officer and special ops flight surgeon. He honorably served in multiple overseas and combat deployments. He's been honored to serve Texans in the Texas Army National Guard during his last 8 years in uniform. He's a combat wounded veteran with a Purple Heart as a recipient, and has also been awarded numerous awards, including the Bronze Star Medal. Doc, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
Good to be here, Colonel. It's always good to talk to you.
Yeah. I've been looking I didn't have to look for a reason, but I wanted to have a good reason because you're so busy. I don't want to take your time up with scheduling on my show too much. But this is your first time with us, Doc, and I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your time and your team's time to set this up, man. The first question. I wanted to mention the meeting in the Pentagon with the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, General Tata, this morning with 10 military advocates of veterans in active duty that they invited to come talk about reinstatement and accountability for this unlawful order that Secretary Hegseth has declared was unlawful at this point, as they had been saying in courts and everything. And you have your own experience with that as one of the first whistleblowers. Sure. And I wanted to give you a chance to just chat about that and get your thoughts on this meeting on the way forward with it.
Right. This is a big day for us, right, sir? You know, this is one of those things where when we were putting together that 231 signers of the Military Declaration of Military Accountability, we knew there was a time, and we knew it would come. When you put that many intelligent minds together, that are stalwart members of our society, the military society that it is, we knew that there would be some action to come from it. We just didn't know how long. But here we are in the precipice of that particular piece, and we actually have one of our members from my campaign team up there today, which is great that he's able to go in and weigh in. For me, 40,000-foot view, real quick. I had the largest deployment of U.S. forces on the Texas-Mexico border since 1812. I was the task force surgeon for Operation Lone Star. They told me you got to give the soldiers the shots. I said, well, we're just not going to do that until we look at all the regulations on this thing first of all. And I already knew, just looking at it from a standpoint of a weapons of mass destruction expert, which includes biowarfare, that this didn't seem right. Now, I didn't have anything in front of me, but all I knew was it just didn't seem right. And so, having lived through the COVID, phase in Texas, where I was the liaison to the governor's office, I saw behind the curtain and realized that there was just something not right. But anyway, DOD comes down. They say, okay, you got to give the soldiers the shots. It does trickle down through the National Guard Bureau and then down to us on the ground. At that point, most of my soldiers were very young, healthy, and I found no reason to do it. Also, by the regulations, Army 40-562 Chapter 8, paragraph 5 through 8, there's multiple reasons why an EUA must be preceded by an informed consent, and that's what we did. And we sent about 3 SHOT teams away from the border. It's about a 5-hour drive to Austin. They got angry on the third one, and they sent a 2-star general down with them, and that's where the rock paper rank game came into play. And I might have lost that salvo, but in the long run, we the Department of Defense, the people that are on the ground, we won that fight, and we were able to hold them off and save a lot of lives, I believe. Yeah.
As a flight doc, and me being a flying squadron commander, and almost my entire officer career was active flying. And I've had flight surgeons work for me before in the unit and everything. But as a flight doc at the level you were at, you were a senior leader as a flight surgeon. Did you, after people were given the shot, did you see the same things that Teresa Long saw, Dr. Teresa Long,
Absolutely.
who was the flight surgeon at Rucker, I think, Fort Rucker?
Absolutely. She and I, we spoke early on. I didn't have access to the Defense Medical Epidemiology database. I did, however, when you're in an active fight, you don't spend a lot of time in the office. Where we were in an active fight in that border, regardless of what the news says. And so when she called me and said, I see that you're stepping up to be a whistleblower with Senator Johnson, I said, yes, ma'am, I sure am. What do you got? She said, look at this. Look at the DMED data. I got back up to Austin, got on a medical system, looked at it, and it was just astronomical. The first two cases I had a cardiac case and a 27-year-old, a 30-year-old. Look, we've been in the Army military for a long time. This isn't normal for that age group. First of all, just common sense, right? A lot of this we can figure it out with common sense. The second one, 30-year-old, stroke-like symptoms, and ended up with demyelination disease, neurologic disorder that basically had to go through speech rehab for several months to come back around. So when you see those things, then we corroborate it with the data. That's where we knew that we were behind the curve here, because our forces are well checked out before they come in, right? We understand, when they come in, they're not the weak ones that we call those out. And so when we get to this point now where I'm watching young people fall by the wayside, my informed consents were pretty straightforward. And I think out of 3,000 soldiers that came on that board, of the first 3,000, I did informed consents for every one of them in groups of 500, 600 at a time. I think somewhere around, I asked my medic, and somewhere around 8 to 10 maybe took the shot. So they didn't need it. And that was my advice until I was fired. The number stayed well below 0.1, 0.2% vaccinated on the border, and it went up to 17% after they pulled me off and put a different doc in.
That's strikingly different than the active duty force, which was in the 90s, I believe. So the two cardiac, the cardiac case and the stroke case, were those military aviators?
No, they were not. They were ground pounders, both infantry, from one from South Dakota, Christy Nome's crew. They had sent some troops down, and they come up, plussed us up, and we had a good cooperation agreement with them. So they brought some people down. They had just taken their shots, and unfortunately, that soldier was put into ICU care and is now out of the military because his heart just couldn't handle it.
That's unfortunate. I asked that question because most people don't realize that in our 20s, when we're going to fly for the military, they do baseline EKGs on us. So they know our heart work from before we even touch a cockpit.
That's right.
And it's tracked all of our lives, until we leave the Air Force, the Army,
well,
as long as we're in aviation.
Yeah, and as a rated flight crew myself, as a flight surgeon, you don't want me holding the stick, but as the guy that's taking care of the people that are, I can tell you that there are a lot of reasons why people don't get upslips in an emergency use authorization. The ability to fly, you're medically checked off. It usually just nixes that. You're grounded for a period of time. That went away. That all the policies that changed when the general looked at me and said, "It's not about the science, doc. It's about the policy." And I knew at that point we've got a big problem, and we took it on to federal court cases and testified on that.
Now you mentioned the DMED database. I'm assuming you saw that before the big change happened, and they minimized all of those adverse reactions that we were seeing. Just how dangerous, from your perspective as a senior flight surgeon, was that move, and how is there a way that the folks that made those decisions to change that database to be held accountable?
Absolutely. The problem is they used a third party to run the actual database itself. Now, it doesn't mean that no one is responsible, as we both know. Commanders are responsible for everything that happens or fails to happen. But there will be somebody that signed off on that memorandum of agreement, and that's what we've got to get to now that we have a favorable leadership that's making a lot of sense up there in the starting at the SecDef on down. We could not get an audience with anybody. I tried, even former guys that I had taken care of downrange as lieutenant colonels that were now 3 stars or currently 4 stars. Would not take our calls, would not entertain anything that was uncomfortable, an uncomfortable discussion. And that's to me, the Army value number 7 is personal courage. They didn't even come close.
Yeah, I'd like to see a forensic look at the software and all the data, so we can see the footprints and the fingerprints as to where the changes started, what the changes were, because that database, I don't know, it hasn't been corrected yet, has it? Because if that's still giving commanders and senior medical personnel and doctors the wrong information, that's as dangerous as the change in the first place, isn't it?
Absolutely. That DMED data was the most accurate data reporting system in the world from our standpoint. It wasn't the BEAR system, which was a lot of subjectivity that went in. This is completely objective. A service member goes into a treatment facility, and then you get 1-for-1 addition of data. All right, so now all of a sudden there was a glitch after we reported it. Senator Johnson looked at the camera. This is a U.S. senator from Wisconsin, and says, "Do not touch that data." What happens to it? About 3 days later, the system goes down. We're all going, wait a minute, what happened here? We got an 1,100% rise in neurologic disorders alone. That was one of the ones I was concerned about with those soldiers. And now it's completely flatlined, no changes. Now they just brought everything up instead of, saying now we have a debilitated force, because that's, they must not have caught it at the entry stations. But that glitch, as they called it, the glitch, that needs an audit on it, specifically a forensic audit.
Yeah, because we've got to correct that data. Commanders use that data to make decisions on people. As you know, the average American probably doesn't realize that, but it's critically important. That's why it was entered. The data was entered in by the providers instead of just anybody, like in VAERS. I mean, even I could go into VAERS and sort of adverse reaction myself. Well, Doc, we got to take our first commercial break. When we come back, I want to get into border security as national security. That is a big target of yours, even before you got in the governor's race. And I want to talk about what you're thinking is happening now and what Texas can do to assist the federal authorities even more. We'll be right back with U.S. Army Flight Surgeon, Lieutenant Colonel retired Doc Pete Chambers.
The businessman from Texas that spent years trying to bring the perfect red heifers to Israel is coming to speak in Collierville, Tennessee, outside of Memphis, on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. They now have sacrificed one of those red heifers. There it is burning. They've now gained 10 gallons of ashes. Why do they need this? Well, the Old Testament, Numbers chapter 19, says that for the purification ceremony, for their temporary tabernacle or full-time temple, they need the ashes of a perfect red heifer. This is the first time this has happened in over 2,000 years. The story is going global. It's highly controversial. In fact, there's even a connection between the attacks on Israel on October 7th and these 5 red heifers. Come and hear him speak live in person, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. Full details, worldviewstore.com, and to get your tickets, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com.
And from day one and last night, border security is national security. And from the Defense Department, we've watched for a couple of decades other people's borders being secured while ours was open for an invasion of drugs and of violence and of chaos for American communities. That stops under President Trump. And the Defense Department has assets that we can bring to bear, not just troops, not just surveillance, not just equipment, but actual planning and capabilities that enhance what Border Patrol is already doing, which is why it's been incredible to hear from our partners about what we've been able to allow them to do, facilitate them, and we've seen it in the numbers. 98% drop in crossings on the southern border. We're not yet at 100% operational control, but we are on our way because that is the mandate that the president has given us. So more resources are coming to this border. We are dedicated to securing it. That's the reason for our trip and our partnership. And I want to thank all the men and women who've been doing it recently in uniform, who have been doing it a long time right here, have dedicated their lives to securing the American people. And at the Defense Department, we are committed to continuing to being a big part of it. So, Mr. Vice President, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, man. Welcome back to Whistleblower Wednesday. And, border security is national security. It's not the first time I've heard that. I've said it in my own political campaigns many times for over a decade now. And Secretary Hegseth is absolutely right. That was at the beginning of the military taking operational control of the U.S. southern border in the way that the Commander-in-Chief has authorized them to do. And my guest today is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, Special Operations Forces Flight Surgeon, Dr. Pete Chambers, who's also a candidate for governor of Texas. But that's, as we talked about before the show, that's not the only reason I wanted to get him on, but I do want to talk about that because I've been following this man since before he became a whistleblower because he was doing border work and putting it on social media and just being honest and telling the truth about it. So I'm excited to have him on. And Doc, welcome back. You can't argue with that. And I didn't give you a chance to talk about what you thought about the president's action yesterday, the commander-in-chief's action to take out that drug boat coming from Venezuela. But a lot of tonnage comes on those small boats and just under the surface submarines, homemade submarines from that part of the world. And Venezuela is one of the main perpetrators of it. Your thoughts on using military force to do that and how it's going? I know you're tracking on this every single day.
Absolutely. This was a godsend. Trump coming into office, first of all, put the tourniquets, if you will, on the bleed on the border. Because me down there as a green suiter, typically during the Biden administration, 12,500 to 15,000 a week were coming across 1,254 miles of Texas border. We had up to 10,000 troops on the border, but that didn't matter because unless you give the correct rules of engagement to those troops, you really are just watching and counting heads. And that's what happened to all of us that were on Operation Lone Star. And I get it. I'm not here to bellyache. What I'm here to tell you is there's a fact world, right? A reality world, and there's an optic world. We were living in a world of optics when Mayorkas was coming down to the Anzadulas Bridge or down there into Del Rio or Eagle Pass at crossing at Piedras Negras. He's saying these are not the droids you're looking for. There's nobody here. We're sending them all home. No, that was a straight up lie. And as far as I'm concerned, that man's a traitor. But what I saw down there was complete, for me as a counterterrorism guy, looking for a needle in a stack of needles when you had that many people coming across the border. You and I both know that I, as a Green Beret in an unconventional world, or even in foreign internal defense world, I look for those seams and gaps in the chaos, and that's how I flew through very easily. That's what we do, right? So now we've got the enemy doing that to us in a kind of unconventional warfare upon us, right? This was a human osmotic pressure wave that was created by other things, right? This is already at the third order effects of what somebody's trying to do to our border to create chaos, to create disenfranchisement, or to create really a setup for a color revolution along our border and with deep into the nation, because it demoralizes. It's what it's created to do, right? So it's not the pawns, the people that were used as pawns on their fault, but they were told they're going to have a better life. They were paid by NGOs to come up and to flow right across our open porous borders. Now we got the tourniquet on it. Good stuff. We had some force protection come out last week down there in Venezuela. You got carriers off the coast. That's good stuff, right? Walk softly, carry a big stick. But then when they start go ahead and probing those forces to see what are they going to do, well, those unlucky souls who were on that craft there bought the ticket, and that was the appropriate action to take by the commander-in-chief. Now, as a commander-in-chief in the state of Texas, the governor has, by articles, two separate articles in the U.S. Constitution, the right to protect his own border. Now, he cannot project forces, but he can protect his border. Operation Lone Star did not do that. It held the line. We could count a lot of heads, but we could not stop what was coming in. Now we can do that, right? That's where we're at. So now we've got 1,000 tiny cuts. I'm going to use the medical analogy again. And so we've got to fix those tiny cuts, right? The tourniquets are on. We're doing resuscitative care to the nation. Repatriation is taking place. I know Mr. Homan, we've talked before. He actually called me up and helped us set up our first team on the border with some money that came through a group through him. So he trusted us, he vetted us, and we have a good working relationship with those groups. So now we are a setup for success. Here's the problem. There are too many that have gotten in this country that have created their own little cells throughout the country. They're out there. People don't like to hear the scary part of the story. It's our job as operators. It's our job as leaders to allow you to sleep peaceably in bed at night and not worry about that stuff, knowing that you have a commander-in-chief in Trump and hopefully in November in Texas doing the same thing so you can sleep at night, because but for us, we don't ever take a uniform off. It's always still here. It's always still here in our hearts. Projection of force or protection of our border is paramount.
Yeah, it is. I like the way you put that. You've got optics and you've got facts. And the facts are the tourniquet's on, but we have a sizable group of people that are more than likely mostly adversaries inside this country now. And I'm not talking about the moms and kids necessarily that were coerced or bribed or whatever, paid to come through. I'm not talking about those folks. I'm talking about the ones that came with them. The Chinese military age males, the Islamists coming out of Venezuela that are Iranian, the Islamists coming through with the Afghanistan refugees, over 70,000 of them are all inside this country. And I've been talking about this for a while. The Green Berets became famous for something called teaching foreign internal defense to small third world countries and armed forces that wanted to become democratic and prosperous, and those kind of things. Do you think we need an active domestic internal defense program that's made up of not just military forces that are active duty or reserves or even National Guard, but also other volunteers? Do we need to have a level of effort that's different than what we've seen in a very, very long time, almost going back to this nation's founding, where every male citizen has a responsibility to help the local police, the National Guard, and federal forces?
It's almost like you're reading our playbook, sir. So exactly. The Texas State Guard, which falls underneath the Texas Military Department, is a militia. It's a militia formed by the states way back at the days of 1836 in the Alamo under Bowie. The other force that was down there was under William Barrett Travis. That was the Washington on the Brazos unit, which currently still has a unit in the Texas National Guard. It was the last unit that I left out of. The first battle streamer says the Alamo on it. And so we've already had this lineage in our state. The Texas State Guard now, though, not the National Guard, not a Title 32 or a Title 10 if it gets activated, but the State Guard falls under state active duty orders when it's called up. Currently exists as a civil affairs unit during a hurricane, right? So eventually they provide relief. But what we have to do is build it back up to what it was. And this is part of House Bill 4914, which we've already got across the governor's desk. He didn't sign it into law. He could executive order that. It went through session. It didn't make it out of committee. But day one for me, that's an executive order. Anybody that joins that in the state of Texas, any former veteran, lives, no property taxes for that person. Because if you're willing to sign up as a volunteer in the state of Texas, then you also get something that comes with that. Because these are the exigent circumstance times that we're in. Once again, don't want to put fear in people's minds, but if you don't understand it, what is the saying? We fear that which we do not know. I've got to tell you about it as your commander in chief, if I'm the governor, so that you can understand why we're plussing this up, right? Why we're plussing up this.
And I don't like to put fear in people's minds either, Doc. But when you've done stuff as long as we've done, wearing a uniform, it's hard to not see and say and see and speak up. And I'm glad you're doing it because regardless of what happens in your political campaign, you're a force for not just good but for duty. Because we all, as Americans, have a duty to safeguard our communities and our families. And for too long now, we've let that go. We've let that concept go and become weak, and it's time to re-strengthen it. And I'm glad to see states taking their state guards. I know we have one here in Mississippi, and strengthening them. And I'd like to get a copy of that bill, see if I could get that pushed through here. Yeah,
we would love to share it. We do currently speak with Florida State Guard. They have a special mission unit out there. We shouldn't be following Florida. I love the state. I love the governor. I love the commander of their special mission. I love talking to them. We're building the same thing here. And you can't throw a dead cat without hitting a veteran in Texas. I mean, that's just the way it is. This is just the American character that William Barrett Travis talked about is instilled in every Texan. And so the point is that we can bring those people, give them purpose. And you talk about, for me, when I got out, I didn't have a purpose. I got on my horse and went down and started helping ranchers to do counter cartel activities. to keep them from getting in gunfights, because that's what we got to do, keep people safe. And so that grew into exactly what you said, domestic internal defense, right? That's just training local forces to thwart off anything that is of tyrannical or oppressive nature. And so now we're looking at, doing this as a governor, and of course, counter human trafficking, it goes hand in hand with this. Is the cornerstone of hundreds of millions of dollars that Cartel del Noreste that I was looking at across from me in Roma, Texas, or Nuevo Generation, New Generation, all the way down to Sinaloa to the west and the Golfos to the east. That's just the small stuff. We're not talking about the Venezuelan Cartel of the Suns, way bigger than all of those combined. That's a state-sponsored cartel organization, which now President Trump is straight up against.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I want to talk about the human trafficking issue and the cartel issue, and kind of separate that out from the illegal aliens not being able to get through in this next segment, because I get the sense that they're still operating and able to get through the border and back out of the border and operate within our country, and are making hundreds of millions of dollars off of things like human trafficking at our expense. We'll be right back with Doc Pete Chambers, Texas governor candidate and retired Special Forces flight surgeon. Be right back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
What's happening in Texas with the whole new compound they're building, and people are now concerned about, oh my goodness, Sharia is coming to our community. Well, I have news for our listeners. Texas introduced Sharia law to the United States back in 1991, exactly 10 years before 9/11. The first Sharia court was introduced in Richardson, Texas in 1991. So basically, Texas led the nation. But nobody was paying attention. When I started the Act for America in 2002, right after 9/11, and I started traveling and I started speaking, and we would do these big events and these big speaking engagements, and I would speak at churches as big as 10,000 people sitting in a church to groups as small as 7 people meeting in small restaurant. And I was shocked when I would travel to Texas, because the fear in Texas was so different than any other place in the country. When I would travel to Florida, and I would travel to California, and I would travel to Oklahoma and Nebraska and Utah and anywhere in the country, people would be concerned about what's happening in their community. But in Texas, when we would have a meeting, people were even afraid to go link to our website to register, because they would say, what if somebody found out that I went to your website? Or people would be afraid to show up. And I was shocked. Right. And in Texas, when we tried to pass American laws for American courts, back in 2011, we started trying to pass it in Texas, where we basically were introducing laws that says any law that is compatible with the United States, we have no problem with it. But laws that are not compatible with the United States should not be allowed to be practiced in America. Do you know that Texas was the hardest place to pass that law? We tried between 2011 and 2016, and we could not pass it, while we were able to pass it in 13 other states, except in the state of Texas until about a few years.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking about the border of Texas, national security, domestic internal defense, illegal aliens, human trafficking, and projected and proposed policies of gubernatorial candidate for Texas, Doc Pete Chambers, Doc Chambers, before we dive too far into Brigitte Gabriel's Act for America discussion there about Sharia law in Texas, there is a linkage between the ability to traffic across the southern border and into the country by the cartels, and some of the things we see going on in Texas, like there's a colony that's made up and is approved by the government and in real estate investors of all illegal aliens. There is a project to make a town all Islamic Sharia law in the state of Texas. So Brigitte's what she's talking about is not a conspiracy theory. It's an actual fact. And I know you've been fighting against the human trafficking piece that the cartels use to flow people in and out of the country and make hundreds of millions of dollars off of it. But it's more than just sex trafficking, child trafficking, slave labor, and those kind of things, isn't it?
Yes, sir. And it's so deep, it's so convoluted. So I'm going to kick off with the discussion on the colonies. One is called Epic City. That's a Sharia law, proposed colony, and it's underway. It's under construction. Another one, there's further south. The name escapes me. It's on the drawing books right now. But listen, she's right. Since 1991, really the big fight came during 2015, 2016. I was downrange, not paying attention to this stuff in Afghanistan and the Levant. But coming home to that and seeing what was going on, this was a concern, obviously. So when I left the border, this is kind of interesting that you brought up the colony. Colony Ridge was coming online. So Michael Yon and Ann Vanderstill called me and said, "Can you get a chopper and can you get us over that Liberty County, which is north of Houston?" I said, "Absolutely." Now, like I said before, I don't hold the stick on a bird unless I got a instructor pilot with me. But we did. We lifted off. We took them out there. We got in the air, and it's a 40 square mile area in Liberty County that is house up to 200,000. It would be the 18th largest city in Texas if it reaches full capacity of illegals. All right. Now there's a school there, a charter school, if you will, a private school in that area that is also teaching Mandarin Chinese. You can't make this stuff up. I'm like, so what's the purpose of Mandarin Chinese in Liberty County? I don't know. I haven't got that one figured out yet. We can propose all kinds of things, but now when we get on the ground and we do the PI work and we start following the money, it's what you got to do. You got to follow the money with these things. Find out that the developer out there, a guy named Trey Harris, has given over $1.4 to $5 million in campaign funds to the current governor. It's embarrassing to him. He doesn't want to admit that he's got that money. He did, and that's over several different campaigns in the past. So not much really happened to that colonia. They call it the colony in Liberty County, other than a few little forays of Department of Public Safety going in there and rolling up some bad guys. But it's still functioning, and there's probably around 30 to 40,000 inhabitants in there right now as we speak. Why it hasn't been shut down, it's beyond me. That would be something that, as the governor, would be shut down, as well as the lady on the that came on there and spoke eloquently. Listen, you can't have another law underneath the Constitution of the state of Texas or under the United States Constitution, period. Now, it did get voted into law here in Texas subsequent to what she's talking about there. But the problem is they're still allowing the community to go on. The rhetoric is still coming out of their imams. That specific imam that she's talking about, and she didn't mention the name, that guy is in the Muslim Brotherhood. If you talk to guys like John Guinaldo, who's a friend of mine, who's a counterterrorism specialist, former Marine and FBI guy, he'll tell you right now, that Muslim Brotherhood linkage is straight up terrorism. I mean, there's no way to get around it. Now, the guy can say, well, he's not involved with them anymore, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to trust those instincts. We're still going to investigate to see what is your purpose, what's your end state. And I'll go in there as a candidate and talk to him. I already told Larry Logan, let's go. We'll go in there and get a camera and walk in there and let them know that there's a new sheriff that's going to be coming to town, and we're not going to authorize this. So you might want to shut this down before you waste a lot more money. But that's the fight we're in. We've got to have some action on this stuff, because I'm telling you, as we talked about, the cartels are shifting their techniques, tactics, and practices, bringing in more money, but they're doing it in other ways. And some of this stuff is pretty nefarious.
Yeah. What kind of logistical infrastructure targets do the cartel use coming in and out of Texas that need to be destroyed? I mean,
right. Oh,
I know the governor can operate within the state,
right?
And that could free up U.S. forces to go into Mexico. And I've advocated for a long time that our forces be used, especially our soft forces, be used to go after the command and control, the leadership, and the manufacturing ability, and the logistics lines of communications that they are controlling into this country all around that southern border. I know it's still happening. And you don't see any reporting on it. Does anybody have a handle on what that infrastructure looks like, where it's at, how it's operated, and more importantly, why not shut it down completely?
Great question. So for me, I understand it, having done, as a Green Beret on the border, the first one on Operation Lone Star that liaised with all elements of federal and state law enforcement. For me, when I briefed the governor specifically, his team and him directly in Del Rio, after we got 17,000 Haitians in 48 hours that showed up there in 2022, 2021. So when we were in there explaining this to him, we said we're going to have to take the gloves off. Now, what does that mean? That means when we get shot at on the border, the rules of engagement were made by lawyers, and the rules of engagement said, get in your vehicles and drive away. They're up armored. Well, that's a probing attack. The enemy's doing that. They're shooting at us, shooting up in the trees. Right. If we put counter sniper fire in there, we stop that. That's all it would take was one or two times, and the cartels are going to quit shooting at us. Right. But because of those rules of engagement, now you got William Barrett Travis rolling over in his grave thinking Texans are running away from cartel guys on the border. Are you serious? Right? This is no bueno. So that's just a minor thing. That's just a probing attack. But those things set up for other things. Right? So now what do we see? Well, we have established a status quo, if you will. But now the federal government is coming in and saying, hey, by this force protection, you see that we're doing this. We are shutting these things down with regard to the Venezuelans out in open waters. That puts a little bit of pressure on Mexico to do their job. So they are standing up on the border on the south side. We call it the Mike side. On the Mexico side, the federales are actually now checking every vehicle because they don't want this stuff to be coming across. Now, there's the optic. Now, here's the reality. Here's the reality. CDL drivers that have foreign drivers that don't speak English, they go to places like California, even some places in Texas, and they pay off somebody, and they've got a CDL. Now, you've seen some accidents recently where a foreign driver doesn't read the sign correctly. He kills some people. This is a way deeper problem, because if I lose my ability to go across the porous borders, what other resource do I have? And that infrastructure comes through the trucking industry. So that trucking industry right now represents, in the form of foreign CDLs that are not legal, a clear and present danger. Because not only can I ferry personnel across in the form of human trafficking, but I can also bring equipment across. I can also bring weapons across, and that has happened. There was a shipment of missiles that came across in New Mexico, across the porous border there, that came into the nation, surface-to-air missiles, and subsequently, has been eliminated, so to speak. Right. But if that's the ones that we found, what else is out there? What did we not find? Now, that was just a happenstance. Some cartel knucklehead telling our guys, as we're talking to them, another team that we talked to, we're doing counter-human trafficking. Wait a minute, did you mention MISOG 3 missile systems? Wait a minute, hold on now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because the trucking industry in Russia is what enabled Ukraine to be able to do the drone attack through trucks on their nuclear bomber force not too long ago. We got a question in the audience. I want to take that real quick before we get to this last break, Doc. Go ahead. Shell is our host over there. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Liz, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My question may or may not have to do with the subject. You were talking about basically deprogramming people. Well, doesn't it start at our high school and college levels? Is there something that we can do as maybe getting more military retirees or discharged military in as teachers and undo the damage that unions are doing in our colleges and our high schools, and get them young and get them trained in civics and old civics and the military and discipline?
Right.
Just
food for thought. Yeah, great question, and that is one of the platforms we have. Is civic duty is cornerstone, and that is bringing back that honor, prestige, and esprit de corps that kicks off at that level, where we understand that without people that put on uniforms, we don't protect this nation. It doesn't have to be military, law enforcement as well. But yeah, that starts at that civics level. We get rid of the woke DEI stuff, which is happening slowly, and thank goodness that Trump has come across the board and doing that through the federal education side of the house. But for us at the state, we come up against multiple different cultures in the state of Texas, about 8 different countries, if you will, or cultures. And so we've got to work, from the inside out and up. And that is a great question. And it's something that our team is working on.
And the governor, I assume in Texas, the governor appoints the supervision, the boards of overseers of the university system. And that's one of the places at the state level. I keep telling folks, the real battle, the real war on American culture, where it's going to be won is at the state governor level and below, not at the federal level. The feds can shut money off and those kind of things and enforce civil rights laws, et cetera. But the supervision at the ground level is really at the governor level. We got to take our last break, Doc. When we come back, we'll show a little clip about property taxes. Let's make this one about your platform, this last segment, and why you're running for governor of the great state of Texas. I'll be right back.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
But a help with property tax. But it's not something I can just ask the legislature, hey, cut the millage, do this, do that, because they don't have constitutional authority to do the local taxes. That is your counties and your cities. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a question on the ballot that is going to allow Floridians to be able to vote themselves relief from property tax. And as I said, my vision is, if you own your home, to truly own it, you have to own it free and clear of the government. You shouldn't have to pay rent to the government. And, there'll be people that are, buying investment properties, fine, that's different. There's differences, but your personal home, we really believe should not be subject to tax. It's an unrealized gain. And I'm just one that's if you tax me at point of sale, I buy a car and I pay a sales tax on it. But for me to then just, pay a tax on the value every now, cars usually when you drive them off the lot go down. Now during COVID, the cars actually went up in value. You'd buy a car, there was such a shortage that you could drive it off the lot and then you could even flip it for $5,000-$10,000 profit because there was such a rush to buy vehicles. But that's our vision. So. And of course, so what do people say? Oh, that can't be done. You can't do that. And my question is why can't it be done? Look, the first place we went to with these audits was Broward County, Florida. They got 1.9 million people. They've had no net population growth over the last 5 years. Their budget's increased 60%.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday, and my guest today is Doc Pete Chambers. He's a governor candidate for the great state of Texas, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, flight surgeon in Special Operations Forces, highly experienced in border security, internal security, internal to us. We called it domestic internal defense training just a little bit on this show. The Green Berets do that overseas for countries that we support doing foreign internal defense to stop tyrannical type operations from developing in their countries. We need to do that here, but he's running for governor. There's more to it than just security. And Doc, I had to show that clip from DeSantis because you've been talking a lot about property taxes and eliminating property taxes in the state of Texas. It looks like it's a major plank on your platform. And before I let you answer it, though, there's some breaking news. Active shooter in Massachusetts, Asian male is what the reporting is so far. That's unconfirmed, but that's what the reporting is. And it's very appropriate to the security discussion we're having about people that may or may not be adversaries in our country. But let's get back to property taxes and your political platform for governor.
Yes, sir.
What are you going to do? I like it.
Right.
I love it. I don't want to pay rent on my house or my farmland.
You should not pay a lien for your property. You know, we talk about these things in of course, esoteric sort of way when we talk about Bastiat and Locke and the things like that, property, life, liberty, and property. But this is real stuff to me because as a guy that earned 100% disability rating with the military, I don't have to pay a property tax, but really it shouldn't be that way across the board when you have other things that legally, I should say illegally, unlawfully plunder the citizens, right? All the way down to the local level. And that's really where a lot of this problem lies in the state of Texas. The governor can say, well, we're going to drop we're going to give you some sort of incentive, or we're going to help you out a little bit. He might be able to drop it 2 or 3% in doing these things in special session. But so far, our special session, we're on number 3 right now, close to the Guadalupe floods, has only turned out to be a political theatrics and really nothing touched with regard to property taxes in the 89th session or in special. So when we look at it and we go, okay, what can we do about it? Well, there's a lot that we can do about it. So we can phased withdrawal, if you will. And Oklahoma is currently looking at this. We saw DeSantis there talking about doing that in Florida and taking it to the people. That's exactly what we have. So in my team, we've developed a PACE plan, if you will, for how to do this, right? So we've got the primary mission set or the primary line of effort or course of action. Then we have an alternative one. And then we have the one that's more contingency based, which will require an executive order, which is going to end up with lawsuits and it's going to cost the citizens more money where they're paying for lawyers. But as a leader, I don't have to know everything there is to know regarding the finances of Texas, but I do have to be responsible for that budget. And so for me, accountability starts with fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, I've seen a lot of the waste with regard to the administrative costs of schools itself. School taxes that are part of the property tax are one of the most easily hyper expenditures that come out of these things with no return. And how do I say that? Affirmed say that is Texas is probably between 30th to 40th, depending on what matrices you use, ranking in the nation with regard to education. We're number 8 in economies in the world, yet we can't maintain our ranking in education. So obviously the money's not being spent wisely. Well, when you do a little bit of research, my team did, 80% of that could be cut from the administrative costs by decreasing, or gradually phasing this out, but also phasing down the costs of the administrative side. Teachers should be making more money. Yes, they're the end state users when it comes to teaching our children, but when it comes to that money. But with regard to our plans, that's one of 3. So we're looking at 3 major plans. And here's a one little part that Texas has, and they'll remember this if they were around during Rick Perry. It's called a 391 commission. So what that does, it allows the Texas local government codes, which is in a provision in a section 391, to authorize the governments within the same council of governments or areas or regions to join together to put things up for a proposition. right? To allow the citizens to say, no, we don't want that. Because what we've seen, let's just say out there in Kerr County, which this is terrible, but I'm going to tell the truth, where the floods were, Kerr County proposed an increased local tax because of the emergency. Yet the state of Texas has an emergency budget of $26 billion. It's a living budget. It continues to rotate. So why aren't we spending that immediately for the flooding? No, we're going to increase local taxes. There's nobody in politics. I've rarely seen this. Lets a disaster go to waste when it comes to grabbing more money. That's what's happened, right? So we've got to stop that.
Unfortunately, the politicians, their appetite never goes away. They don't raise money and keep and then say, no, we don't need those taxes. We face the same challenge here in Mississippi, and we've got this very long-term plan to eliminate our income tax. But if you don't meet certain requirements every couple of years, the law disappears and evaporates. That's because the politicians wrote it instead of the citizens writing it.
And one of the things I used to tell my troops is, I sure hope taxes go down. Hey, hope is not a plan. I've got to walk in there day one with a plan. And so that plan is this. And that 391, that's what stopped Rick Perry from doing the Trans-Texas Corridor. Now, many people forget about the NAFTA agreements and all those things. And that Trans-Texas Corridor was going to take from Chinese ports in Mexico supplies directly to Canada on a special toll, right? That was going to be authorized. It didn't happen because Texans got together and stopped it. So Texans can do that. They just, we go through a period of time, we forget about things. That was in 2007. So we forget about things. We've got to bring that up. As a governor, I'll be reminding citizens, hey, you've got this ability. It's in your Constitution. It's at the state level. That's where things, and it's at the local level. If you look at Mark Trahella's book, Doctrine of Lesser Magistrates, truly the sheriff has more power in his county than does the Department of Justice if he exercised it.
Yeah. Exactly. Most sheriffs have more power than anybody else in the state, especially in southern states like Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi. Most of them are tax collectors of some sort or another. That's how they get their power, is through money. So you're primarying or sitting Republican governor. Is that correct, or is he termed out?
No, unfortunately, they don't have a limit. So he's. I am primarying, and that right there. If people out there know the history of Normandy, that's a Point du Hoc moment. That's straight uphill. That's the battle we're in.
It is. So how are you being received by the base of the party as you travel across the state and talk?
Yeah, it's somebody once told me if you use the word grassroots, you're a loser, right? And I don't believe that. Populist, if you will. What we are being received in I'm going to use a Trump term here, hugely. We are out there beating the brush. I mean, every day we're getting after it. We're hitting a trail, and what I'm seeing is people that used to say, well, Abbott, he's okay. Just like I said when I came home from war. Yeah, he's okay. No, it's not okay because I didn't see behind the curtain. Right now, I've seen behind the curtain, and it's not the guy. It's the system. It's the uniparty. It's the establishment. It's the corporatocracy. Those are heavy pressers on what we would call freedom, right? A constitutional republic. Anytime somebody says, that they're trying to save our democracy, I say, no. It's a constitutional republic. There's democratic methods involved there, but this is a republic if you can keep it. And that's what we're doing. And so we're pushing hard. We are a forcing function. We see that he responds back with the very same things that we're talking about. He responds back with. So we know we're over the target, but we haven't reached the IP yet. So, the beginning of the run if I'm on the ground calling one of you guys, I'm telling you, hey, this is where we start. We haven't made it there yet.
I got it. Yeah. The initial point, folks, the IP is called the initial point where you're turning in on a target. So we're almost to the end here, but I got to ask this question.
Sure.
What is the biggest source of frustration amongst the voters, Republican voters you're talking about? Because here's what I perceive, and I've lived in Texas. I used to pay property taxes in Texas. I know how high they are. Even 15, 20 years ago, they were high. But a lot of optics, but little actual happening. is what I hear a lot from people that I know
frustration.
in Texas.
Mm-hmm. Based upon our sentiment analysis. Yes, sir. Yeah, based on our sentiment analysis. And this is just me knowing, just having been here now, 8 years more, 10 years since I got out of active duty. It's just, we're not seeing a lot of forward motion. We're seeing a lot of big corporations brought in. We're seeing a lot of developers brought in. A lot of them get tax cuts right away. That's how you lure them in.
Absolutely. Well, Pete, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell folks where they can donate to you and find your platform real quick before I let you go.
Yes, sir. Doc Pete Chambers with an S, docpetechambers.org. There's a donate page there, and there's a volunteer page. If you're in Texas, and get every veteran to vote on the 3rd of March, that's going to be Liberation Day. If we have the veterans of Texas vote, we win the primary. Period.
I agree with you. Go out and get it, my friend. Go out and get it. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it. Good luck. Stay frosty and kick some butt out there. Tomorrow, we're talking with Jesse Patria, Islamist terrorism expert. You got Islamists here in America at a conference this weekend telling people how to disrupt the F-35 supply chain system. We got a problem in this country, and we got to get it fixed. I'll see you then on Truth Thursday.